Welcome to the NCDPI Overview of LinguaFolio webinar on Monday, September 24th. This session will provide an overview of LinguaFolio, the formative assessment tool for language learners in English as a Second Language or ESL and World Language Programs, K-20. Information will also be shared about LinguaFolio resources and the LinguaFolio Online or LFO for NC Pilot in the 2018-2019 school year. Those who participate in the live broadcast of this webinar can earn 1 contact hour towards a CEU for licensure renewal. And we'll talk about that a little bit further on. All right, here is today's agenda. We are going to start with a welcome and overview, particularly of our poll system that we use in GoToWebinars. We have 2 presenters today, myself, Anne-Marie Gunter, the World Languages Consultant here at the NCDPI, and my colleague, Satley Stocks, one of our ESL Title III consultants here at DPI. Satley is going to talk about what is LinguaFolio and the LinguaFolio resources for ESL and World Language teachers. Then I'm going to talk about LinguaFolio Online for North Carolina and professional development for LinguaFolio. And then we'll finish up by 5 o'clock with next steps and questions. So let's begin with a poll and a time to check our questions box to make sure we've answered all of those. In a poll, this is an opportunity to get some feedback from you and find out what your goals are in this particular question with today's webinar. We have a poll feature embedded in GoToWebinar, which is similar to other kinds of participant response tools you may work with in your classrooms. So for today, we want to know, what are your goals with today's webinar? Are you a teacher or administrator gathering details about LinguaFolio? Are you a teacher getting information about the LFO for NC Pilot? Are you an educator earning a contact hour for licensure renewal? Are you an individual language learner curious about LinguaFolio? Or do you just want to remain anonymous on a Monday afternoon? I'll go ahead and launch our poll, and then you can click on the screen to indicate your answer or answers. In this particular poll, you can answer more than one. Please choose all that apply. All right, it looks like almost everyone has put in their vote. We'll take 5 more seconds to finish up and then move on. All right, thank you for voting in our poll. I'll go ahead and share the results with you so you'll know everyone's reasons today, including yours, or everyone's goals with today's webinar. Almost all of you are a teacher or administrator gathering details about LinguaFolios. That's great, 84%. About 2/3 of you are teachers getting information about the LFO for NC Pilot, which is coming up very soon. A little less than half are here as educators earning a contact hour for licensure renewal, and about 1/4 of you are here as an individual language learner curious about LinguaFolio. And some of you are here for several of those goals combined. Just so you know, contact hours to accumulate for a CEU can be earned by those who participate in the live broadcast of this webinar, as well as other webinars that are offered, and this opportunity is made available. Today's webinar is 1 hour long, so 1 contact hour or 0.1 CEUs can be earned. Please save the email receipt you receive from the GoToWebinar system to document this contact hour towards a CEU for licensure renewal. This is an academic subject or content activity for ESL and or world languages. Also note that local LEAs or districts or charter schools must approve professional development offerings. So be sure you check with the person at your school or district who's in charge of that. In addition, a recording is being made of today's webinar, and the archive, including these slides and a recording, will be available for local training approximately 1 week from today. These materials can be used as professional development resources locally, with contact hours documented by the district or school if you would like. All right. Let's do one more poll question as we get started here today. Who is here today for the Overview of LinguaFolio webinar? Are you a teacher of ESL, English as a Second Language? Are you a teacher of a classical language like Latin or Ancient Greek? Are you a teacher of an alphabetic language like Arabic, French, German, Greek, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, Spanish, Turkish, or Urdu, which are some of the many languages we teach here in North Carolina? Are you a teacher of logographic languages such as Chinese or Japanese? Or are you a teacher of a visual language like American Sign Language or ASL? If you're an administrator, by the way, feel free to check off the languages that you have teachers sharing with students. So let's go ahead. We usually get faster at polls as we go, so enter who you are today as far as a teacher goes and the language that you teach. We are getting a lot faster. Please go ahead and take the next 10 seconds and finish putting in your votes, and then we'll close out this poll. All right, thank you for responding. As you can see, a little over half, 61%, who are here today are teachers of an alphabetic language. Almost half, 44%, are ESL teachers, and another 17% are logographic language teachers like Chinese and Japanese. We also have an ASL teacher or two with us today. Great. Thanks for letting us know who's here. We're always curious to know that, seeing as how we teach so many languages, 18 different languages across the state of North Carolina, plus we have our English as a Second Language programs that LinguaFolio works for. All right, with that, we will continue on, and Sally will talk with you about what is LinguaFolio.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me, Anne-Marie?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today in this webinar. This is Atlee Stokes speaking. I'm one of the 3 ESL Title III consultants and at the Department of Public Instruction. So before we start our LinguaFolio review, let's start another poll to learn more about the attendees to today's webinar. Our poll says, what is your experience with LinguaFolio? If you can select all that apply, so we learn more about you and your experience using this resource. We have different options. I am a LinguaFolio trainer. I have used LinguaFolio for a year or more with students. I have used LinguaFolio as an online tool, either eLinguaFolio or LinguaFolio Online. I have used LinguaFolio as Word or PDF documents. I have very little or no experience with LinguaFolio. So we see our votes, see how we're doing, how many more do we need?
Let's take about 10 more seconds for the vote. All right, we're going to go ahead and close out the vote.
Perfect, thank you. So let's see which are the responses that we collected. Oh, so we have 33% of the audience today have very little or no experience with LinguaFolio. So that's good because we're going to have an overview and see all the different resources that we have and where to find them and how to use them. And we have 11% of the attendees have used LinguaFolio in the past in one of the formats, online e-LinguaFolio or LinguaFolio online, or also the Word or PDF documents. And we have a 6% that have used LinguaFolio for a year or more with the students. Okay, so let's start. Thank you. So what is LinguaFolio? LinguaFolio is a formative self-assessment tool that helps learners evaluate their language performance and track their progress. It guides learners to reflect on their learning process and take responsibility for their own learning. LinguaFolio requires learners to take ownership themselves. It also allows a student to realize their strengths and their weaknesses in their language process, in their learning language process. They think about what language domain do they need to improve. Is it listening, speaking, reading, or writing? Which vocabulary do they need to learn? LinguaFolio is a language portfolio learners keep throughout their educational and professional careers to document their language competencies in all languages that they are learning, including heritage languages and English for speakers of other languages. If I share my personal experience with the audience today, I am a language learner. My first language is Spanish, and I learned English in another country. I learned in an English as a foreign language setting. And as I reflected on my learning process, I realized that my writing and reading skills were very strong, but my listening and speaking skills needed a lot of attention. So also, when I used to work with Central American families and the students in the schools, I had to learn new vocabulary because I'm from South America. And when I encountered these families and I had to support them and we tried to communicate, I learned that I needed new vocabulary, new expressions in my first language. Even communicated in Spanish was sometimes difficult. And we had a lot of funny, thankfully only funny misunderstandings when speaking in Spanish. So for me, being able to understand that nothing was wrong with me or with my families or students, but that language was a living thing, something that grows and changes, something that is enriched by its speakers, allowed me to identify areas in which I had to set goals for improvement, learn new vocabulary, and have new experiences using the language. This is what LinguaFolio does with the students. It helps them to understand that they can set different goals and improve in their language learning, and they know that if they have accomplished some goals, they still need to work, and that learning language is a continuum, that they have mastered some areas, but they still need to work on other areas and different vocabulary and expressions. So LinguaFolio helps language learners through this process and helps them document this process. If we go to the next slide, Anne-Marie. LinguaFolio was developed by members of the National Council of State Supervisors for Languages, NACESFOL, and it is based on the European Language Portfolio. It is modeled after the European Language Portfolio, which was developed by the Council of Europe. It is based on the European Language Portfolio, ELP, and the National Council of State Supervisors for Languages. And the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages can-do statements. The can-do statements are organized according to the American Council by proficiency levels and sub-levels. The proficiency levels are novice, intermediate, advanced, and superior. And these levels have different sub-levels, low, mid, and high. And the can-do statements are used in LinguaFolio to help learners identify in which level they are in their language learning and see which are the next goals, what are the next steps that they need to follow to move from one level to the other one in the continuum. Next slide. Okay. It says, why is LinguaFolio? LinguaFolio is aligned to the North Carolina Standard Course of Study and supports the students' outcomes for proficiency in English language development standards for English as a second language. So LinguaFolio is aligned with the WIDA standards. It's also aligned to the World Languages Essential Standards for all languages, including classical language programs, dual and heritage language programs, and modern languages. LinguaFolio is a standards-based self-assessment tool. When combined with work samples, external exams, or proficiency-based tests, it can provide a complete picture of a student's language performance. The students can see how they are performing, and also comparing with the other assessments, they know what they still need to improve and how they're doing in the continuum. LinguaFolio has some components. We'll see in the next slides, there are three main components for the LinguaFolio: the biography, dossier, and passport. We'll show you later in the next slides where you can find a lot of resources to be able to work on these three different parts or components of LinguaFolio. As you start the process, if you are new to LinguaFolio and you want to start with your students, this is a good resource that you can have. But Anne-Marie later during the presentation will talk about how LinguaFolio Online has all these resources and materials and is easier to access thanks to technology. But even if you can access that part, you can still have and access all the different resources for these main components of LinguaFolio. So what is the biography? This is a record of personal language learning history. Students may reflect on how they learn and to set learning goals. They evaluate their learning goals and reflect on language learning and cultural experiences. Learners use the three parts of the language biography to reflect on and document their overall language learning processes. Biography is divided in three main parts: the background information. So when we start working with the students using LinguaFolio, they define who they are as language learners. What is their history? What classes have they taken? Are they, for example, in French 1 is the first level, the second level? Have they had any other of classes in the school or out of the school? So they track that experience they have, that background information using a different language. So we have in the slide, it says it's a record of personal language learning history that helps them set goals. So once they know where they are, what they have learned so far, it's easy for the learners using LinguaFolio to set new goals and see how they can move from the level they are to the next level. Then we have the intercultural encounters in the biography as a second part. And this is the part that helps language learners document personal language learning history. They reflect on how they learn and complete a learning inventory, and also how they evaluate their responses to different cultural encounters and learn how to react. Is this a formal setting, an informal setting? How they should interact with the people, using cultural experiences as a starting point, and students learn how to explore their feelings, perceptions, and goals of culture through the language. They can learn that if their first language is English and they're learning a second language that could be Spanish, French, or Mandarin, how are those cultures different and how language can help them interact in the different languages. And the third part of the biography is the checklist and self-assessment grid. These checklists are used by the learners to self-assess, but see what they can use. And in different scenarios. For example, I was talking the other day, there was a noise in my car, and I tried to explain to the mechanic what was happening. And I thought, well, okay, I feel that I am proficient in the language, that I can communicate in English. But when I went to talk to the mechanic, I realized that I didn't have all the vocabulary that I need to know to explain, okay, I know my car has brakes, but I didn't know that maybe the brake, the rear brakes, the pads were wrong, those needed to be replaced, or the front brakes. So there was a lot of vocabulary that I didn't know. But when the students are working with language learners are aware of these things, now I know. I say, okay, my next goal is I'm going to learn about this because this could happen. Situations with language is not something that if I don't know today, it's okay, I didn't know, and that's it, it's over. No, it's a situation that can happen again in life. So students learn that, okay, I didn't know this word or this expression today, but I can study, I can practice, I can interact with other learners and learn. So next time that I have to face this situation, I will have the vocabulary that I need to be able to communicate and express what I'm feeling or what is my concern or what is happening. The other part of the LinguaFolio, one of the components is the language dossier. This is a collection of work samples chosen by the learner to document language learning progress with the skills in each mode of communication. It can be used to demonstrate individuals' language abilities to others, including educators, parents, peers, and potential employers. This is a good thing about LinguaFolio is that as language learners collect this evidence of what they're doing with the language, about their language process, then they can share this with others. So if they are going to an interview, they have these different evidence where they know they can show that they are proficient, that they can interact and communicate and maybe write or speak in any of the mode of communications using the other language. Also, the dossier shows this evidence and shows the language growth and progress and can be kept by year and can be used as the students interact with the other parts of LinguaFolio, with the biography and the passport. And the passport, to finish with this slide, is an element that provides a complete picture of what the learner can do with a language. It's the same as when you have a passport and you go to another country. Your passport is what is your ID, is what says who you are and when you are coming from. So the passport shows all the different experiences and competencies in the different languages for the language learners. And they can show their qualifications, the self-assessment, and all the summative test scores. They show this is who I am as a language learner in this second language. Okay, and now briefly, I'm going to show you the different resources we have for ESL and world languages. We have developed the NC Folios Wiki. Okay, thank you. The world languages and ESL teams during the years at NCDPI have administered and developed this wiki page called NC Folios. The NC Folios Wiki, along with the other wikis at NCDPI, and in many districts, and this is something not to be afraid of now that you're new to LinguaFolio, you still will have these resources, but we are thinking about moving all these resources to a new website or another server where we can host all these materials, because many of you might know already that Wikispaces is a company that will shut down by January 2019. So we have plans for moving all the content of our wikis to a new online home. So for right now, we will have access to LinguaFolio and all the resources in the Wikispaces, but in the future, in the near future, maybe by the end of the fall, we'll see a new website or any online format that will host all these materials. So within the NC Folios wiki, we have the NC Folios, Art Folios, Civics Folios, and LinguaFolio. If we click on the link, there is a direct link ncfolios.ncdpi.wikispaces, thank you, Anne-Marie, we'll see the front page, the main page, shows a brief description of what LinguaFolio is. And then we have the 3 different resources shared for arts, civics, and LinguaFolio, the different initiatives. So if we click on the LinguaFolio section, visitors can access the general information about LinguaFolio, and they will see, you will scroll down a little bit. Participants have 3 main columns in this page. They will see all the resources and information about LinguaFolio Online, and Anne-Marie will tell you all the details about LinguaFolio Online in a few minutes. But then we have also the ESL and world language specific sections. For the ESL specific section, this section has links to the ESL LinguaFolio classroom materials. And this one has all the PDF and Word documents. You will have access through the online, LinguaFolio online version, but we have also all the PDFs and Word documents in this one. And we have this information, these resources translated into different languages. And then Marie will show you this in the next slides as well when she talks about the LinguaFolio Online. But also when we look at the column, the 3rd column, that is the world language specific column. And this section has links to the world language LinguaFolio, sometimes called LinguaFolio Senior and the LinguaFolio Junior classroom materials that are also in Word and PDF formats, which has been downloaded now because they were hosted by another server. And currently, these LinguaFolio materials from the NACESFO and ACTFO can do statements from the National Council of State Supervisors for Languages are hosted in the organization's website.
And just to show you this, we're going to go over to the World Language LinguaFolio Classroom Materials page on the wiki, and anyone can get to this, of course, because it is a public wiki. And you see the pieces of the LinguaFolio that you can download as Word or PDFs, just as Sally has described them. Here they are. We start out with the biography at the top, and you see there's different components of the biography, and you have a column with the PDF version, a column with the Word version. Part of the biography, as she mentioned, is a self-assessment checklist, and you see them listed here. In the one section is all of the modes, all the different communication modes as PDF and words, and then we have them organized by proficiency level, and that's where the new 2017 the CESFO ACTFL can-do statements documents for LinguaFolio are posted. You see those, as well as the ones from 2013, in case you're still using those or prefer those to use with your students. Everything is still available. In addition, you have the dossier that she talked about and the passport that she mentioned, along with the proficiency grids that come with our National LinguaFolio materials. And we'd like you to know here in North Carolina, we've taken those national grids and made sure that the alignment to our North Carolina Standard Course of Study for both world languages and ESL is very clear, so that we have customized grids for all of our language programs that match our state standards, and so that you can clearly see and quickly see which components of LinguaFolio go best with the language program that you're working in.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
We can also show them quickly the ESL materials. It's the same kind of thing. Again, the biography, the self-assessment checklist, including the ones that are customized for ESL with the 6 different proficiency levels of WIDA that Sally mentioned. So same kinds of things as before, but a page just for our ESL programs.
And some of our teachers who have used LinguaFolio, they like to get these resources first, the PDF and Word documents, and review them, and then so they can work with the students. So once they start using the LinguaFolio online, then they are more familiar with how they look, how they are expected to work with those resources, and how they can start reflecting on their process. Okay, and Anne-Marie, if you can continue with the LinguaFolio Online for North Carolina and tell us about this initiative and how it has evolved from the original LinguaFolio and how it is now that brings us now to our pilot in the state.
Great. So what we just showed you is all of our LinguaFolio materials, and as we noted, they're available in Word or PDF. I noticed we got a question in the question box about, is LinguaFolio a book or an online program to access? The truth is it's both. It depends on what you want. If you as a teacher want to use LinguaFolio as Word documents or PDF, you can download them and print what you want or make those available to your students as a booklet for them. If you would prefer the online tool, I'm going to tell you about our LFO for NC, which is the online version of all of our LinguaFolio. So let's get started with some history here. The eLinguaFolio was North Carolina's free version of an online LinguaFolio for any language learner. It was developed in the 2009-10 school year thanks to grant funds that we had available at that time, and it was originally piloted in the summer of 2010 and then was used for 8 different school years. So starting the 2010-2011 school year through last school year that ended in 2018, we had eLinguaFolio. It was housed in several places during that time, but most recently it was housed on the servers at the North Carolina Virtual Public School, or NCVPS. The eLinguaFolio software was available through June of 2018, and it has now been closed because it could not be updated. And so we decided to move to a better software for our online version of LinguaFolio. The Title VI Language Resource Center at the University of Oregon is called the Center for Applied Second Language Studies, or CASLS, developed an online version of LinguaFolio in 2008. That was in collaboration with the National Council of State Supervisors for Languages that bring us LinguaFolio nationally. And that first LFO was used only with StarTalk institutes. StarTalk institutes are a federal grant program that funds summer language institutes for students and teachers. And it used a very condensed version of what we now know as LFO or LinguaFolio Online. And they still use a condensed version for the StarTalk programs called Pulsar. And so that's how you know it's different from the actual LFO that is used nationally. Then LFO was made available to the public in a broader sense and in a more expanded version. And it's available for a small fee to maintain the servers, usually about $2 per account. One of the things we do as a state is make sure that LFO is available for free, but it is available to other entities outside of North Carolina for a small fee through CASLS. The LFO now also has an app available for smart devices, both iOS for Apple products and Android, and it can also be accessed online with a computer. Several states have worked directly with CASLS to have an LFO for their educators so that the fees could be paid by the state and educators could use LFO for free, as I mentioned that we're doing. South Carolina and Virginia have the LFO like that, and now we have that. All LFOs have the most recent necessitable actful can-do statements. And as you see here, our LFO for NC also includes our ESL can-do statements that were created several years ago in our state. So starting in the spring of 2018 and going into the future, we will have that LFO with everything that everyone has an LFO nationally, plus our ESL can-do statements. To support our English learners, those ESL can-do statements are available in 10 languages besides English, and those are Arabic, Chinese, French, German, Hmong, Japanese, Korean, Russian, Spanish, and Vietnamese. Also, audio files accompany the ESL can-do statements, since an ESL teacher may not be proficient in all the languages in their classroom, and there is visual support for the first 2 proficiency levels on the ESL proficiency scale, entering level 1 and emerging level 2. That's all built into LFO for NC. Research shows that when students do things like reflect on their language learning with can-do statements, it's best to do it in their first language, which is often English for world language learners. But again, we want to make sure we're meeting the needs of our English learners as well. And so we want our can-do statements to be available in other languages. We had a tremendous amount of help in the spring of 2018 in a limited pilot with teachers from both ESL and world language programs, and we were able to refine a lot of our materials and get them ready for use across the state starting in the fall of 2018. One of the things we needed for LFO for NC to make sure it was available to everyone was to have unique instructor join codes for every school in North Carolina. Because the way LFO for NC works when it's used in a school is that a teacher joins and has an LFO for NC account, and then they can include all of their students in that and set up student accounts for use in their classroom. Much like they would do with the Word and PDF documents, they're just doing it online. We have an interesting educational landscape in North Carolina, as you can see. When we went to make sure there were unique instructor join codes for every school in North Carolina, that included all of our pre-K through 13 schools as well as higher education. Pre-K through 13 means, of course, our charter schools, our district schools at the elementary, middle, or junior high and high schools, along with academies, middle and early colleges, and other specialized schools operated by public agencies, like our Department of Health and Human Services, or NCVPS. We also made sure that LFO for NC would be available to our independent or private schools so that all of their schools also had unique instructor join codes and they could set up their own LFO for NC accounts if they wanted to be involved in this. For higher education, we made sure we included all of our community colleges. There are over 50 across the state, as well as our public and private universities. Because again, LFO or LinguaFolio in general is for all language learners, K-20, and actually, as Satley said, is really a lifelong tool that a language learner can use to document their language growth and to set new goals for themselves as they continue their language learning journey. So let's stop for a moment. We've given you a lot of information and we're still going to talk some more about LFO for NC, but we want to know what level of students do you work with? And again, you can check all that apply here. So I'll go ahead and launch that question so you can let us know. All right, please go ahead and finish up your voting. All right, thank you for voting. I'm going to go ahead and close our poll and then share the results with you. Well over half of you with us today are high school teachers, along with about another third being elementary school teachers and another third after that being middle school or junior high teachers. We also have some folks from the community college and early college level. And early college, if you're not familiar with that, is where a high school and community college are combined and students are fulfilling their high school requirements as well as earning credits at the community college, usually up through an associate's degree before they leave high school. They graduate with both their high school diploma and an associate's degree or considerable amounts of credits towards a four-year degree. And then we have a few from college or university. Thank you so much for letting us know that. So let's talk about LFO for NC for a bit. So obviously this is the online version of LinguaFolio. It has everything you would find in the Word or PDF versions. It's just the online tool for LFO for LinguaFolio. Because we have an LFO for NC that is customized for our state, we have our own LFO for NC landing page at the University of Oregon's website for LFO. This is a screenshot of it here. It is very similar to what they have with their green logo, but ours is all done in purple. That's how you know you're in the right spot for your LFO for NC. And you can see that they have all the things that you would expect them to have, a way to log in, a way to get help, that sort of thing. When people join the LFO for NC pilot and do their LinguaFolio training, then they do get access to their accounts here, as well as materials to make sure they know how to set up student accounts and so forth. So one of the benefits of working with CASELs at the University of Oregon is that they have a lot of materials they can share with us and make our lives as teachers much easier as we get LFO set up in our classrooms and start using it. They have a whole set of tutorials, and we've made sure through our limited pilot we've already done that those tutorials are ready to go. For instructor tutorials, they have information about an LFO overview that talks about the entire LinguaFolio online system, how it works, and what it looks like. They have a lot of screenshots and visuals to help folks who would prefer to look at it that way. They also have a tutorial on signing up and logging in, and that's for instructors to create their own accounts. And then they have tutorials on adding and removing students, as well as assigning can-do statements. Because remember, we have different kinds of can-do statements, different proficiency levels, as well as the necessitable actful can-do statements and the ESL can-do statements. They have a tutorial on the evidence review process. So when you use LinguaFolio online, you don't have a dossier per se, but you have a way for students to upload evidences right to their can-do statements, just the way they do with their paper versions of LinguaFolio. And they have a tutorial to talk with teachers about how best to use that part of the software to review those evidences that students are uploading to share. They also have a tutorial on looking at student evidence and reviewing it, as well as a tutorial on, of course, resetting passwords for your students, which is something that sometimes happens. In addition, there are a number of student tutorials that you can share directly with your students if you're using LFO for NC. Some of them are similar to what the teachers have. So for example, they have an LFO overview tutorial, as well as one about signing up and logging in, just like the teachers do. They also have a tutorial on how to upload evidence, which is critical as a student because you need to submit your evidences. And then they have tutorials on the self-reflection process and the My Proficiency Overview, which is kind of like the passport version of the LFO. So what that looks like in the online tool. And then they have a tutorial for students as well about the evidence review process that is used in the classroom. Also, because many of our students use the LFO to go, which is the app version of LFO, they have student tutorials on how to use the app. So logging into the app, adding a language, and uploading evidence on the app. And they have a set of those for each type, whether it's an Apple smart device or an Android one. Both of those are available for students. So it doesn't matter which kind of device they're using, all of the tutorials are available. One thing we learned in the limited pilot we did in the spring was that our teachers, first and foremost, obviously have to have their LFO for NC account, but when they go to do things like add and remove students and look at evidences, it's best if they do that through the website so that they log on their computer to do that. Teachers can also have a student account so they can use LFO for NC on a smart device or as an app. But when they're going in as a teacher, they need to go in online on a computer. Here's a look at the LFO for NC dashboard, and the actual screenshot we have here, of course, is from the app, although what this looks like on screen on a computer is very, very similar. And so we wanted to show you this today so you can start to become familiar with LFO for NC and decide if this is the format you want to use with your students or if you would prefer the Word and or PDF versions of LinguaFolio. So on your LFO for NC dashboard, students would see their can-do statements that they're choosing, and you as a teacher would decide, are they going to use the necessitable actful can-do statements for rural language learners or the ESL can-do statements. Now keep in mind, they have access to all of those. And so particularly when you have students who are in heritage language programs or ESL, we want them to be reflecting on their language learning in whatever languages they know, whether they're learning them in school or learning them at home or in some other way. So you always have the choice of can-do statements, and the students can literally toggle back and forth to the statements that are available through our LFO for NC. Also, we have a lot of types of evidence they can upload to show their learning in a language, and we always want to make sure this matches what's available to students to demonstrate this. One of the challenges we were having in eLinguaFolio was that there was quite a limit on the number of evidences and things that could be uploaded, and now we don't have that problem anymore that we're with LFO for NC. So the types of evidences that can be uploaded include photos, videos, and audio captured on the app or on the website for LFO for NC. And so you see those icons that are associated with that are always visible to students. And I'm sure many of us have worked with online tools where you take a picture, capture a video, or record an audio within the app. And so that's what this does right here. You don't need a separate app or tool to do that. It's within LFO for NC. Students can also upload Web 2.0 tools that they've created, like YouTube videos or Google Docs, with the titles and links as part of their evidence for language learning. So if they have created, let's say, a video of maybe a skit they've done or something to show what they can do with language when they're working with other people, they can upload the YouTube video through this Web 2.0 tool icon that you see here. They can also type text directly into the app, and this is good for writing samples in the language learning classroom. You see they have an icon they click on, and they literally start typing into it, and it saves it for them. And finally, if they have other media, like they've taken a picture on an iPhone or some other tool, they've taken a video, or they have document files from the Microsoft Office suite, like they have a Word document or a PowerPoint presentation or an Excel spreadsheet or anything, that are not captured in the app but that they have, they can upload those under the media icon you see here. So anything they would want to put in their sort of online dossier, if you will, to show their language learning is available to them through LFO for NC. So I've talked a little bit about how we did in the spring. So when this first became available and we had our LFO for NC, we worked with 50 teachers in the spring, both ESL and world language teachers. There was about an even mix, and there was even one teacher who was both an ESL teacher and a world language teacher. And they gave us feedback on everything to make improvements. So they talked to us about the instructor and student tutorial manuals, how they needed to be improved. They looked at the app itself and made sure that all of our can-do statements were correct, and we made some fixes because of things that needed to be changed. And they let us know, too, when it came to the training that went with LinguaFolio and other materials that were available, what was working well for them for LFO for NC and what was not, so that we could make changes and get this ready for statewide rollout. Plus, they had over 600 students, because all teachers had at least one class of students they were working with in this pilot. Over 600 students tested LFO for NC by submitting a little over 1,400 pieces of evidence. And so I'll just let it come up on the screen to show you different kinds of things the students uploaded in the spring. And that even in this limited pilot we had quite a number of things being uploaded to show language learning. And we got some really good feedback from our students about why they liked LFO for NC, why it was easier to use in the classroom, and it was a real help in their language learning. And that was good to know, especially when we think about how we can improve it going forward. We will have, and we already do have, an LFO for NC wiki page that is different from the spring pilot, because now the spring pilot is done. We have updated materials and so forth, and want to make sure that they're always available to everyone. So you can go to our LFO for NC wiki page, which is the direct link is there at the top. And of course, this is on our NC Folios wiki. Or you can go to the LinguaFolio page that we were on earlier and just click over to that with the direct link. And so you see at the bottom of the screen a screenshot of our LFO for NC page and the information about, right now, our LFO for NC pilot application. So let's talk about our LFO for NC extended pilot for this school year, 2018-2019. If you want to become involved in this, please fill out the application that's available at this bit.ly link. And you've probably seen this before. This is also on the website, and it'll be in these materials once they're posted. Our application is open until this Friday, September 28th. That's an extension. Because of the storm we've just all experienced, we did extend the timeline for the application, and so it's available through this Friday. All you're deciding when you fill out the application is that as a teacher, you want to give LFO for NC a try in your classroom, and so you're letting us know that by applying. It's a fairly quick application, and it asks you several questions about where you're located in the state, and what languages you teach, and what kind of training or experience you have already with LinguaFolio. In early to mid-October, We will be notifying all of the applicants for the LFO for NC Extended pilot of their status, whether they've been accepted into pilot and that kind of thing, and when they can begin. Then in mid to late October, we will register anyone who needs it for the LinguaFolio training Canvas course. It is very important if you're going to use LFO for NC or LinguaFolio in general in your classroom that you have some training with LinguaFolio. You may recall we asked you a question about that earlier. Even if you have no experience with LinguaFolio, that's okay. You can still apply for the LFO for NC pilot. And if you need training, we're going to be offering that through a self-paced Canvas course. And so that'll be fairly easy for you to complete and get the training you need so that you can be successful with LinguaFolio in your classroom. Then in November and December, if you're completing the LinguaFolio training Canvas course, you'll have time to do that. Again, it is self-paced, so it's up to you when you take advantage of that and complete the requirements. It will, as I said, be required for teachers who are new to LinguaFolio, but it's optional for everyone else. Some people indicated they had experience with LinguaFolio, and I know we even have some folks from the spring 2018 limited pilot we did. And so if they wanted to take that training, they certainly could. And then once that course is complete, teachers receive their unique instructor join codes and can set up their teacher and student accounts and get rolling with LFO for NC in their classrooms. Then January through June are basically second semester for everyone. If you're working in a high school or a school that operates on semesters, we'll have our LFO for NC extended pilot in progress. And once again, we'll be doing a schedule of feedback surveys, online discussions, webinars, etc. To meet our pilots' needs. And so we did 3 webinars last time. And they were webinars sometimes like this, but more importantly, they were often webinars where we gave teachers a chance to talk about their successes and challenges with LFO for NC in their classrooms. They consider that a very good open forum, and we're hoping to do more of that. So we may have webinars or, like it says, online discussions so that teachers can share how to effectively implement LFO for NC with their students. After the school year ends, so after June 30th officially in 2019, certificates will be emailed to our LFO for NC piloters, because if you're selected for the pilot, all of the work that you do with things like webinars and online discussions and surveys will be documented towards contact hours and a CEU for licensure renewal. Also, when you do the LinguaFolio training Canvas course, that will be available for contact hours or 1 CEU in our academic subject area. So there's lots of opportunities there to do your own professional development and get credit for that as you need to for licensing. So that's a lot of information, but let's ask you this last question. Where are you using LFO for NC? Are you already in? Maybe you were one of our spring 2018 piloters. Would you like to use LFO for NC and your application has already been submitted? Are you thinking LFO for NC sounds good and you'll submit your application by this Friday? Or do you like using the Word and PDF versions of LinguaFolio? Or maybe there's another answer. So let's go ahead and do this last poll and see where you're at with LFO for NC. All right, let's go ahead and take another 10 seconds. Go ahead and get your votes in for where you are with using LFO for NC. All right. Thank you for sharing. Looks like almost half of you said you'd like to use LFO for NC and you've already submitted your application. A few more have said you'll submit an application soon because you're interested. We have a handful who said they're already in. They were part of the spring 2018 pilot, so they're going to continue on with LFO for NC. And we had quite a few who said other. If you'd like, you can put what your other options are, other reasons are in the question box. But it's good to know where you're at with LFO for NC. The last slide I have to share with you is about professional development for LinguaFolio. Some of you have asked about this before, and so we always want to include that. We do have 7 online training modules that are on the NC LinguaFolio section of the wiki. They are linked on that page specifically, and they are housed on the NACESFL, the national website for LinguaFolio, at the link you see there. Those training modules, by the way, are also incorporated into LinguaFolio training Canvas course for North Carolina that we're developing specifically to launch this particular pilot, but also to use in general with LinguaFolio training. Also, there's been LinguaFolio training face-to-face and in blended ways. So there's been past offerings at conferences like the Flint Conference, the Foreign Language Association of North Carolina, as well as the Carolina TESOL Conference, our state organizations for both world languages and ESL. I know during the Flank pre-conference webinar, sometimes there's a 1-hour version that's adapted from module number 1 for teachers or administrators from those LinguaFolio online training modules. In addition, there are a number of districts and schools that have had local workshops and trainings that they've either created for their teachers or that they have access in other ways and brought in LinguaFolio trainers, for example. So that's something you may have run across if you've got experience with LinguaFolio training. In addition, on the LinguaFolio wiki page, you'll find teacher videos. We always think that teachers learn best from each other, and so we have 8 different teacher videos that were captured at the 2012 LinguaFolio Carousel presentation we did. And this is where teachers who use LinguaFolio in their classrooms shared what they do, how they introduce it, how they implement it, just different kinds of things that they wanted to share. Those 8 different videos include 3 videos of ESL teachers, 1 from elementary, 1 from middle, and 1 from high school. There are 4 videos that focus on world language teachers from the middle and high school level. So there was 2 face-to-face teachers, 1 in French and 1 in Spanish, as well as an online Russian teacher who presented. And then there's 1 dual language immersion teacher who presented about using LinguaFolio in a K-8 environment. And also on that page, you'll find an ESL Professional Learning Community or PLC guide. And this takes our online training modules and kind of customizes them to a PLC environment where ESL teachers can walk through them together and learn from each other. And then we also have our LinguaFolio webinar series archives from the past several school years that include things like the Introduction to LinguaFolio for Administrators materials, and then the ones from last year that focused on exploring the new necessful, actful, can-do statements that are now available as part of our LinguaFolio. So all of those are linked, as it says, from the LinguaFolio wiki page. And that concludes our webinar today. We thank you for joining us. This is our NCLFO pilot group. You know me, Anne-Marie Gunter, your World Languages consultant, as well as my colleague, Statly Stocks, our ESL Title III consultant who works on LinguaFolio. At Castles, with our LFO for NC, is Stephanie Knight. She's the assistant director there, and she's our go-to person for questions about LFO for NC. And then, of course, we have our LFO support team for any technology questions about LFO, either online or on the apps. All right. I'm going to go ahead and close out the recording for today. I do thank you for joining us today, both of us do. Thank you for that. And please stay on the line for additional questions.